Now, those four equations are known as the kinematic equations. They will be on the front page of your exam. They are on page 21 of your textbook. This chart will not be on the exam, but it's obvious what it is. In kinematics, in motion, there are 5 players, 5 variables. And each one of these equations has 4 of those variables and is missing one. Okay? And that tells you which equation you're going to plug and chug into. Okay? The one that gives you the right variables. Now, here's how we solve this problem without thinking. I want everyone to turn off your brain and just follow the recipe. The first thing we do is we make a list of the 5 variables. I've done this so many times I don't need my brain. Delta x, a, the initial, the final, delta t. That's step 1. Step 2, I have to find 3 of these from the problem statement. Well, the boat is originally cruising at 3 meters per second. It then has an acceleration of 1.6 meters per second every second for 10 seconds. Once I have found 3 of those from the problem statement without thinking, I have 2 blanks. One of those blanks is worth $500,000 in a houseboat and maybe a chance to go to med school. The other one is worth gar nix, as the Bavarians would say. Absolutely nothing. Okay? Now in this problem, we want to know how far does the boat go. That's the one that's worth the houseboat. That makes this one the who cares. I'm still not thinking. That is the key to solving the problem without your brain. The variable that you don't care about, that you don't want to know and you don't know, is the one that tells you which equation you should use. If I don't want to know V final and I don't know V final, I better use the equation that doesn't have V final in it. And there it is. You see, that one's got it, that one's got it, that one's got it, this one doesn't. So I use that third equation without thinking. I just plug and chug. This is going to be 3 times 10 plus 1/2 times 1.6 times 10 squared. This is going to be 30 meters. Let's see, that's 100 times 1.6 is 160. Half of that is 80. And lo and behold, I wasn't thinking. Never once did I use my brain. Okay? Now, you try it. Without thinking, solve this problem using that method that I just taught you. A plane is cruising at 50 meters per second. The plane suddenly begins accelerating with a 4 meters per second acceleration until it reaches 90 meters per second. How far does it travel in that time? So, with your neighbor, see if you can solve this problem. Okay, how many of you have already figured out which of the 4 equations you want to use? Okay, let's do it together. I write down the 5 variables. It's always the same list. I know that the plane originally has 50 meters per second. It has an acceleration of 4 meters per second every second, and its final velocity is 90 meters per second. That leaves 2 blanks. One of them I care about, one I don't. In this problem, it's asking how far does it go, so that's worth an A in the class. That makes delta t the who cares. So I go to the equation that doesn't have delta t in it. And that's this one here. Now, this chart's not going to be on the front page of the exam, but you can look at this and say, oh, there's delta t, there's delta t, there's delta t. This is the one without delta t. So I plug into that equation. V final squared is equal to V initial squared plus 2a delta x. This is going to be 90 squared is equal to 50 squared plus 2 times 4 delta x. This is going to be 8100 is equal to 2500 plus 8 delta x. I am not using my brain, people. It's turned off. Subtract 2500 from both sides. You get 5600 is equal to 8 delta x. And delta x is equal to 700 meters. Now, there's a danger of turning off your brain, especially during an exam. If you turn your brain off during an exam, sometimes you forget to turn it back on. So I suggest that if you're going to use this method on an exam question, that you go back and check your answer. Now, you can always use your gut to solve these problems. And if you use your gut, use your brain, you better get the same answer. Now, when you solve it with your brain, you usually go after, the first thing you go after is the very thing you don't care about when you're doing plug and chug. In other words, in this case, delta t was the who cares, so that's the first thing I'm going to look for. How long is it going to take for this plane to get from 50 meters per second to 90 meters per second if it's going in steps of 4 meters per second? How many seconds is it going to take? 10. Okay? Sound like I cooked these numbers to make them easy? Yeah. Okay, so 10 seconds, it's going to be speeding up. Now, I don't want the fastest speed or the slowest speed. I want the average speed. If the slowest is 50 and the fastest is 90, what's halfway in between? 70. On average, this plane is going 70 meters down the road every second that goes by, and it does that for 10 seconds. How far does it get? 700 meters. You can do it with or without your brain. Now, folks, I know this is possible without the brain, and this is how I know it. A good friend of mine, Graham Oberon, created a program called Albert. And this program can solve any kinematics problem in one dimension. You type in your problem, and it can solve it using this recipe. And then it comes back and says, where would you like to start? And it holds your hand and walks you through a solution. Now, folks, if a computer can do this, then you can do it without your brain, because a computer doesn't have a brain. It's just following a recipe. Okay, there's a funny story. When Graham developed this program, he was a student in South Africa. He taught great big huge classes, and this was back when computers took up a whole room. So he told his students that this program of Albert existed. It did not. And he told them that they needed to sign up for a half-hour period of time when they would go to a room. In the room was just one monitor. And they would type in a kinematics question, and the computer would come back and say, where would you like to start? The students never figured out, never once did they suspect that there was no computer hooked to that terminal. It was connected to Graham's office, and every time a student was in that room, he was sat there next to his computer, and he was answering. He was Albert. What the computer was doing was just recording everything the students typed and everything he typed. And then at the end of 2 years, he went back and built Albert. I know it exists now because I've seen it work while he's in the room. It's the old Clark Kent thing. But if a computer can do it, you can do it without your brain. We've run out of time, folks. I hope this helps you and doesn't hurt you.